Okay, hello everyone. Welcome to lecture number 8, and it's coincide with the US presidential election, and the votes are counting at the moment. So some of you, we got a mini poll here, and some of you answered and mentioned that Trump is going to be the winner. So far, the results showing it's Biden, but it's a close call. So hope we can see some results later this afternoon. Okay, that perhaps is not of our business at the moment. So let's go back to our course, project management framework. And today we are going to talk about project closing and project selection part 1. So project selection, we got 3 parts. The first part is going to be discussed today. And the next 2 parts are going to be covered in the next 2 lectures. So the learning objectives are: learn the procedure for closing a project, understanding the factors that can contribute to project failure, and how we can organize a meeting for lessons learned. Understand the fundamental of project selection tools, and also learn how to run SWOT analysis for project selection. You may ask, what is SWOT? If you haven't heard before, no worries, I will discuss about that later. Also, we'll discuss about how to calculate total cost of ownership. There are many other tools in terms of financing and budgeting and evaluating the investments and returns. Most of those are going to be covered in lecture 9, but I will start with total cost of ownership at the end of this lecture. Okay, first of all, let's start with a question. So is the project finished when all the deliverables are achieved? So at the start of the project, you got some deliverables. So if you, at the end of the project, you will achieve all of those deliverables, does it mean that the project is finished, or something else needs to be done in order to make sure that the project is finished? Okay. Majority of you said that no. Okay, so is there anyone who wants to mention that why? Please use the chat box. Is there anything else that you think that needs to be done? Emiliana, do you want to talk? You can.
Hi, can you listen to me?
Yeah.
Well, there still has to be a procedure of delivering to the client and closure. So
Yep.
once the project deliverables are achieved, the process of delivery starts.
Yep, that's right. So there are some other things that needs to be done beyond that. Yeah, that's right. And also, Jonah mentioned is about the success criteria should also be noted. So all of that is true. So let's go through it step by step. So closing a project, first of all, you hold the final meeting with the customer and the stakeholders and your team, if it's applicable. And you get the customer formal approval confirming that the project is completed successfully. So, and preferably you also get their signature. But it's not just you run the meeting and just present the customer with a form and let's say, sign it because the project is completed. So it's not going to be like that. You're going to hold a meeting, and in this meeting, you discuss about the thing that has been achieved, all the deliverables, the budget, was the project delivered on time and within the budget, or some other things that you want to discuss during the project. And we'll discuss with the customer, is there anything else that they want to discuss, or all the things that they wanted from this project, are they happy with it? So this kind of thing you discuss with the customer, and if everything was okay and they're happy with the final product and they tested the final product and it's all good, so it means that the project is completed successfully and can get the signature. The third thing that you do, so you document lesson learned during the project. So you see that what worked well and what didn't. So we'll go back to lessons learned in a bit. And you also produce and disseminate the final report to stakeholders. So most of the project, they have a final report, and I'll discuss about that, how to prepare the final report and what should be included in the final report. There are also some finance, so an HR that you need to close some contracts and transition team to the next project. Sometimes the people are only employed for this particular project. So when it's finished, it means that the contract is also finished. So you don't have any obligation, but sometimes it's an organization, you have multiple projects within a year. So when one project finished, is your role as a project manager to discuss with the team members and ask them if there's any other projects or other project managers or senior manager, is there any other project is available at the moment that you can transit those team members to that project. You also archive the project information. As we discussed before, you have a preferably shared cloud drive, and then you can have all those information there. After the project is finished, you're not going to delete all those information. You just keep it safe. You may give access to the project owner only, and just remove the access from other people that they are no longer working on the project. And sometimes it's a big project. You've been working on it for a long time. Let's say 1 year, 3 years, 5 years, 10 years, and that kind of project, perhaps you need to celebrate the completion of the successful achievement of deliverables and finishing that project. But if you got every month you got one project, maybe it's going to be not looking good to celebrate like every month or every week. You can do, but then it's going to be a little bit unusual. Okay, so there are different categories in terms of the project closeout. First of all is the organization. So you got a closeout meeting, as we discussed, reassignment plan, personal reports, and those kind of things. You also got financial. So if there's any audit, if there's any money that you need to collect from other people, or and also the final report in terms of the finance and the budget that you need to produce and include it in the final report. Also, there is a purchasing side, which is going to the compliance document, supplier notifications. So they're letting know that the project is finished, and also any final payments. So for example, you purchase something, but you haven't paid it yet. So it's a good practice that you don't close accounts. Perhaps 1 month or 2 months after the project finished. So if there's any final payment or receivables, you can just do that without closing the accounts. Also, in terms of the site, you need to close down the facilities. If you're using any facility, if it's ongoing thing, then perhaps not. And also equipment, material disposal, so all those final things that you need. It depends on the project, but if this project is just a once-off thing, then you need to, if you hired any equipment, you need to return it. if you have got some waste, you need to take care of it in terms of the disposal or recycling, etc. So the main thing that the project needs to have in order to say that it's successfully completed is getting the customer acceptance. And there are two main things that needs to be achieved in order to say that we are confident that we can say that the customer is happy about the outcome of the project. First of all is the deliverables. So at the start of the project, if there are no major changes within the project, we know what kind of deliverables we should achieve by the end of the project. And if those deliverables are achieved, then it means that the majority of project is successful. But sometimes there are some other success criteria that you need to achieve on top of the deliverables. So let's discuss about those things. So for example, the testing of the final product. You've done all the things and you produce the final product, but the testing is going to be something in terms of the success criteria to show that if it's going to really work. And also training the customers and commissioning. So you want to show to the customer how it works. Maybe you run some trainings, 1 day, 2 day, 1 week, or it depends on the product and the project. So maybe you also need to do that. Maybe it's part of the success criteria to get feedback from users. So for example, there's a threshold. If 80% or 90% of the users are happy with this product, then we can say that the project is successful. And if it's below that, maybe we need to do something. Maybe there is a follow-up project or extension of the projects to just fix the thing that didn't work out. And also you may have a comparison against a benchmark product. So at the start of the project, you had a benchmark product. So for example, you want to develop a new product that is going to be better than this benchmark, or just fix some of the problems with the benchmark product. So you just compare against that and see that did you really achieve that or not. Sometimes also you need to satisfy the standards. So it can be like a building standards or any other standards. So there is some tests that needs to be done, some maybe short-term, some long-term tests that can be beyond the duration of the project, and you maybe finish the project now, but maybe you need to wait another 2 years or something like that, especially if it comes in the construction is about the durability of the new material, those kind of thing, or trial, so that it takes a long time in order to make sure that it satisfies the standards. Okay, lessons learned is an important part of the project manager, and you shouldn't skip that. If you're doing a waterfall methodology, you run the lesson learned at the end of the project. And if you're using the agile methodology, lesson learned is even more important. And after each iteration, you need to conduct a lesson learned in order to make things better for the next iteration. So in the lesson learned, it's important to document what a strategy and management practice work to repeat in the future project. It can be something from your perspective in terms of the managing the project, or it can be from the team members. The other thing, on the other hand, what didn't work? So you should avoid that in the future project or future iterations. So there are some tips in terms of running lesson learn, and it's very important in order to follow these tips in order to make sure that lesson learn meeting is going to be successful. So first of all, don't wait until the project closes. You can't do that, but it would be better to gather lessons learned from the team as the project is progressing. So maybe after each milestone, you can run the lessons learned in order to make sure that for the next milestone, things are getting better. And if your project is agile methodology, then after each iteration, you're definitely going to be having the lesson learned in order to make sure that next iteration is going to be successful. This is probably the most important things for you because you're running this meeting. So make sure that the environment is positive and productive. So no blaming. So it's not a place that people blame each other or someone, for example, saying we did that and didn't work, and you suddenly say, oh, you shouldn't have done this, or someone else saying that. So make sure that the environment positive and productive so everyone can share their bad experience as well as good experience. And just let team talk about themselves, not others. So there is no judgment. So if they're like mentioning like, the other team wasn't up to the job or they delayed us or those kind of things, it's going to be a toxic environment and it's going to be a lot of arguments and it's not going to be productive in terms of the lessons learned. So as a project manager, you should rule this meeting and you should make sure that everyone's just talking about themselves to keep the environment positive. If someone is bringing some negativity, you just can mention that and ask them to let other people talk about their both negative and positive experience without any judgment. And what you don't judge it. I just write it down and see without any name. So you want to be anonymous, although that the people, that who are the people. But when you take notes and when you want to put it on the report, you just make sure that it's anonymous. So what kind of thing, for example, what saves time? So we did this and that saved us time. For example, we ordered the materials 2 weeks sooner than we needed and we kept it. So we make sure that we got the materials just on time or some other thing that we did to save time or any difficult challenge that they solved or any new approach that they do. And how would they do it differently next time? For example, if something was a bad experience, so what was the cause of that? How we can make sure that next time it won't happen. Sometimes it depends on the work environment. You can get the senior managers or managers out so team members can share their experience honestly. But if there are it's a good environment and they can share everything together, so you can also let the manager be involved in that meeting too. So as I mentioned, allow anonymous feedbacks such as suggestion box. So if you don't want to run the meeting or the environment is not that good to run those kind of meeting, you can also ask to have a suggestion box without any names. So you can just collect the lessons learned. And then make sure that lessons are going to be available to every team members and manager, but anonymously, so without any names. So the reason is that if you just keep it to yourself, you know that's perhaps what is going to work next time and what you should avoid. But at the same time, the team members also should know that in order for them also to avoid some of the mistakes and also lessons from the others, so what worked well, so maybe also they can adapt it to their work. So that was about the lessons learned. One thing that you need to do as a part of the project closing is the final report. So there are some things that you need to have in the final report, and perhaps the most important thing is the executive summary. Not everyone has a time to read like 30 pages, 40 pages, 100 pages report. But the executive summary is just only 2 pages. So mainly most of the stakeholders, owners, and everyone can have some time to read the report. So it's very important. So you just write this section quite good in order to, in a nutshell, tell everything about the project. At the start, you may have some little introduction and background, so don't overdo it. Just mentioning what was the main problem or what was the opportunity that they want this project wants to take, and you also discuss about the aim and objectives just in a very perhaps 1 or 2 paragraphs. Then you discuss, did the project achieve the deliverables on time and within the budget? So maybe what was the main deliverables and milestone? Was it the project finished on time, within the budget, and those kind of things? And if there was any important test result or benchmark comparison, you can just briefly mention about that. And any other highlights about the project, for example, completed much faster or with significantly less costs, or any additional features of the project or the product that you developed that you want to include it. So for example, saying it's 20% this new software is going to be working 20% faster than the previous software or something like that. But the criteria is only working 10% faster, those kind of things. You want to include in the final report your final schedule and costs. So you got a baseline in your Gantt chart, and you want to also show that how the project finished based compared to that baseline, and also the final costs and the budget compared to the planned budget. So delivery dates and variance with the reason. So if the project finished like 1 month later or 3 months later, what was the cause of the delay? Was it discussed with the project owner and customers? And for example, how we can avoid that next time. Total cost and production of costs for each major milestone task. So that is part of the budget. So how much money you plan for each milestones or working package, how much actually was the cost, your actual cost, and cost variance and reason behind it. For example, is it the material is getting expensive when you want to buy it compared to when you had the plan? Or there's any other reason for the cost variance. Maybe you need more people at one stage in order to make sure that the project is going to be delivered on time, and that was the reason for the cost variance. You also discuss about the return on investment and other financial measures, if applicable, which I'm going to discuss more about those financial measures in the next lecture. So other information to include, maybe you can discuss about any significant risk and how you mitigated those risks, or maybe there was a significant change to the project scope, which went through the change management process, and how did you deal with it, and how it affected the budget and delivery time. You also include the lessons learned as per the meeting or the anonymous suggestion box that you received, and you put it there anonymously. At the end, you got the conclusion, and in the conclusion, you have a summary of what has been delivered, its advantages and disadvantages. So conclusion is going to be something like an extended version of the executive summary. It can be 5 pages or a little bit more, and that includes you don't want to repeat the executive summary, but it kind of expand it in the areas that you think that perhaps executive summary is limited to fully explain those features or any other things that you put in executive summary. At the end, you got the appendices, including the final project schedule, the final statements, audit report, if applicable, or the budget, or any other thing that you think that it would be useful to have in the final report. So you also can put it there. So then the next step that you want to do is the close the contracts. So sign the project completion acceptance means that the contract is closed, but there are some other tasks that's required after the contract is closed. For example, providing customer or user support. Maybe there is a plan, so after the project is finished, you provide some supports for 1 year or 2 year, or if there's any customer survey that you want to do or any follow-ups as per project plan. You also do that after closing of the project. And also vendor contracts must be closed and all the invoices should be paid. The other thing is give advance notice to the employer about the near completion of the project. The reason for that is that team members can be easily transitioned to new projects or find another jobs. Especially in the organization that there are many projects happening at the same time and they plan it ahead. So if someone's working in the project that you are the project manager, when you're close to the finish of that project, make sure that let the senior manager and employer knows that this project is going to finish in a month or in 2 months or 3 months. So these are the team members that we are not going to longer employed in this project. Do you have any other jobs for them? So archive all project information and make sure to give access to future user owner of the projects. So that's already we discussed, and you have a like a drive, cloud drive, in order to you can remove the access to some of the members that they're not working anymore on the project, but you will keep access for the project owner or the future users of those products. Financial accounts may need to be opened for a few months after the project is complete for follow-up on expenses. This is especially is going to be hard at the end of the year. So if your project is finishing by the year end, that is going to be tricky, and because you're heading to the Christmas holidays and things, and also before the end of financial year. So those two things are going to be tricky in terms of the closing of the accounts. So when you're planning the project, make sure your project doesn't finish preferably on those time in terms of the keeping open the financial accounts, because for example, before the financial year, if you want to keep it open to the next financial year, it means that for the next financial year, you also need to produce financial reports and tax redemption and those kind of things that the finance people will do. Okay, so up to now we discussed that the project was successful and those were the steps that you take in order to close the project. But sometimes you realize that the project is a failure and you don't want to continue it anymore. So you just want to close a project that is failed. So the reason can be the project has ceased or slows to the point that the further progress on the project is no longer possible. Maybe there is a macroeconomic event or something like a pandemic that's affecting your project. So you're, for example, setting up student accommodation, and nowadays there are not many students, so you just asking yourself, is it a good thing to invest on, for example, building a student accommodation at this time? So then perhaps you want to close the project because it was a failure and you don't see any future in it, at least in the near term. Or when the project has been indefinitely delayed. So maybe you're waiting for a product that is essential for your project to be done, maybe like a special construction material or a software or something else that you need, and that is coming from overseas, but there is only one producer of that product, and they haven't provided for you for a long time. So you cannot do this project as you wanted, so it's definitely delayed. So you don't want to spend more money on it, so you just close that project. When its resources have been deployed to other projects. This is for a company that the staff are working on the multiple project at the same time, or maybe the company realized that the project that they started is not going to be longer viable or economical. So they want to finish that project, and then they come up with a new idea that wants those people instead working on that project. And this is another reason that you want to close a project that was a failure. The question that needs to be asked for terminating a project is that, is the project still consistent with organization goals? So if it's not, then perhaps you need to close this project before the end date and move on something else. Is it practical, useful? Is the project that you're producing maybe in the middle of the project you realize it's not going to be longer practical or useful? So it just maybe you're producing something for airplanes, and because of the pandemic, there are not much flights happening at this time. Maybe you would just want to it's not useful anymore, so let's avoid continuing that project. So is management sufficiently enthusiastic about the project to support its implementation? So that's another question that you want to ask yourself. Maybe at the start of the project, everyone was happy in order to do that, but as the project goes, there are many hurdles and things that didn't work out. So maybe the management are not very keen in order to support that project anymore. Is the scope of the project consistent with the organizational, financial, and strengths, or any scope creep which cannot be addressed? First of all, maybe you plan something and then you realize that you don't have enough money in order to go through, and your first budgeting wasn't sufficient, and you didn't do the due diligence in order to make sure that's how much money you need to put in this project, and you cannot afford it anymore, or you wanted to get a loan from the bank and bank doesn't want to lend you money anymore, or any scope creep. So maybe in the middle of the project you realize that the scope that you put for this project is not going to be enough for the product that you want to develop, so you need to have a scope creep, or the management, they just change their aim and objectives, which means that the scope is not longer the same thing that's used to be, which means that you need to put extra money, and maybe you don't have that extra money to put in. Or does this project represent too great an advance over the benchmark? So sometimes you're realizing that you thought that your idea was novel and interesting, but you end up like the product that you're developing is actually doesn't have much more advantages over the benchmark, or maybe the other competitor is also already working on the same product and they have got better market share than you do, so you just don't want to continue doing that. Or maybe there are macroeconomic events like COVID-19 affecting your project. So as I mentioned, for example, you're working on a student accommodation, or you want to set up a new college, or you're working on the tourism industry, and you want to build a hotel or something like that. So in this environment, maybe those projects are not going to be financially viable in the short term, and perhaps the risk that you're taking for the longer return maybe not well justified. So what else do you think? What other factors and what other question you may ask yourself in order to terminate the project in the middle of it before it's finished as you planned? Any idea? Yeah, can be, for example, change of owners or merger of the companies, and that project is not part of the agenda anymore. Or maybe there are big safety issues. Yeah, that's right. That's something happened in the middle of the project, and you didn't consider that as a risk, or you didn't have any risk mitigation plan for it, and that's happened, and you cannot just take it anymore, and you need to close out the project. And environmental risks, you realize that there's, for example, some waste that is going to be bad for the environment, and also maybe some environmental organization are chasing you in order to avoid getting that product done. So these are the client satisfaction. Uh, you realize that the client perhaps is not satisfied with the work that you're doing, or many other things. Maybe you didn't involve the stakeholders, some stakeholders that is essential for this project, you didn't involve them, and in the middle of the project they realize that the thing that you're doing is against their will, and they just want to stop you, and that's another thing that perhaps you want to terminate the project. Changes in the markets, the budget cuts, all those things, as you mentioned, are also important, and you need to just monitor those things and make sure to realize their effects on your project, and just discuss with the project owner and manager. Would it be better to close the project before just spending more money on it? Yep, and also conflict between the stakeholders and customers. If the project manager should put all the stakeholders and owners and everything from the start of the project till the end of the project, and uh, the main aim is just to make all of them happy in order the project goes ahead. So if there is any big conflict, then the project manager should come up with a solution to save that. If it's not savable, then perhaps the project can get terminated. Yep. They also can be like a war or any other issues, or financial meltdown, or can be strike on the streets, those kind of things that it's unknown that you cannot predict. Okay, so there are main reasons for the project failure. First of all, the project plan and scope was inappropriate for the goal or expected outcome. So you had a goal in mind, but the thing that you plan and the scope that you want to have for this project was inappropriate for the goal that you chose. Second is the lack of identifying and engaging a stakeholder at the start and throughout the project, as we discussed. That is very, very important. So you shouldn't just ignore some of the stakeholders and saying that it should be all right, we will deal with it at the time. So at the start of the project, before or even before a start of the project, you need to involve those stakeholders. So insufficient financial and non-financial support from the senior management and stakeholders. So that's another thing that you need to also be very careful. Make sure that when you're on the project, first of all, there is enough money for running that project. So if you're working for another company, or you're doing the project for another company, also it's even more important, because it's happened especially in the construction industry, then you do the project that's for some people and you won't get paid. So make sure that there is sufficient financial support, and you just secure that. And also make sure that they also, in general, they're supporting this project as their main goal. So it's not something in a side way. The other things is about you as a project manager. So maybe you didn't do a good job in terms of the managing the project, and maybe your interpersonal skills or planning wasn't good enough, or your problem solving wasn't sufficient for dealing with constant problems that you may encounter in the project. The other thing is that selecting inexperienced team members for the assigned jobs. So as a project manager, you may not have the power to select the team members, but if you do, make sure that you just uh, you know select the experienced team members, those that you done potentially similar from the customers, not just selecting the team that's already worked with them and you know them, and for example, they are not maybe skillful for this new job, but because you got in a personal relationship or something like that, you want to get them. So this is a big no-no, and it's going to end up like in a failure of doing that project. There might be also work culture issues. Sometimes it's out of your hand in order to fix it. Maybe there's a continuous work culture issues and the team are not matching with each other, and so those kind of things there are going to be a lot of arguments and discussions, and just the project doesn't perform as you want. So that can be also another issue that can result in the project failure. And also, as we discussed, there are macroeconomic events or things like pandemic, redundancies, bankruptcy, and those kind of things that may also happen, which means that the project is going to fail. Okay. So we got one question here. Project failure does not mean it gets closed. If the project fails and you gather with the stakeholders and the customer and discuss the project, and when you see that the project is no longer viable, then the project is also gets closed. Or does it get closed out most of the time? So when it's not going to be viable anymore, it gets closed. So it depends on what kind of project. But if you just on plan and everything goes all right, then you're not going to close the project. The temporary closure is also possible. So sometimes, for example, you're starting the project. So for example, you want to, let's say, again, to that example, the student accommodation, maybe say that it's not a good time. So we got the land and we got the approval and everything. So let's wait until next year, and then we can start the project and see that if everything goes all right. For example, if the vaccine came, then we can start the building project. Some projects do open to the public, and only after going out into the market and realizing it doesn't work, then it closes. Is that accurate? So as we mentioned, only delivering the project deliverables is not meaning that the project is successful and completed. So if there is a project that there are some elements in terms of the success criteria that beyond that, we also need to monitor that. And if there is a continuing work on that that needs to be done, then based on the response that you get, you will continue doing that. But if you realize that the product, for example, or the project is no longer viable or didn't meet the success criteria, then you also stop doing that anymore. But the main thing is about the closing the project, as we discussed, is about mostly it's about the financial side of it, and also about the people that working on the project. So those kind of things that you're spending money on, that is the main thing for the closing of the project. So if the project is finished and you're no longer paying anyone and no one is on the project, so the closing of the project, although still is a choice, but because you're not spending any money on it or spending any time on it, it's not like a big deal, or in terms of like keeping it open or close it. Okay, that's all about the project closing. If you have any more questions, please feel free to put it on a slide, or we'll get back to it at the end of the lecture. So let's discuss about the project selection. So the question that I want to ask you is, assume that you have $5 million and you want to invest on a project over the next 5 years. You have a few options to consider, which are either solving current problems or new opportunities or products. Which factors you would consider on selecting an investment project? Okay, so rate of return is the main thing, as you mentioned, the cost, the level of risk, the profit. So I can see that the main thing, as you mentioned, is the financial side, and it's also important, and is one of the main things that you need to look at in terms of the rate of return and the economic value of the project that you're doing. Because at the end, if your company is for profit, then those things are important in order for selecting the project. Because at the end of the day, you want to make profits. Sorry. I hope that I repeat myself. The things that in terms of the finance and economy are the main things in terms of the project, especially if your company is for profit. So those things in terms of rate of return, cost is important, and the level of risk that you're taking for the return that you're getting. Those things are also important. Okay, so let's move on. So some projects are completely unrelated to the strategy and goals of the organization. So then you perhaps do not want to invest on those projects. Some projects require funding levels that are excessive related to their expected benefits. So for example, you need to spend a lot of money in order to get the benefits, so it's going to be very high risk. You want to perhaps avoid this project. And also you should ask yourself, should be undertaking all potential projects in our organization? And perhaps the answer is no. So we need to realize that what should be our priorities and how we can prioritize the projects. So there are some tools that we can do in terms of the project selection and prioritizing the projects that I'm going to discuss in these lectures and the next two lectures. First of all, you want to avoid multiple projects. So you just want to focus on the projects that are having the high priority for your company. So because delays in one project can delay other project if resources are from the same pool. So you got all the staffs, but you're overburdened them with a lot of projects at the same times. And if one project get delays, then still those people are involved in that project, and it gets a lot of time from them, and they're not going to be productive. It's going to be inefficient use of resources, as we discussed, and it's going to be also the management problem. So because there are many works at the same time and managing all of them, because each project is unique to itself, and they may have a lot of problems that you need to solve. That is going to be another thing. The other thing can be a bottlenecks in resource availability. So one essential resource for different project, maybe there is only one project manager and many projects. Maybe there is a particular engineer that you need for all this project, or architect that you need, but you only have one of that resource, and it's kind of at the same time working on different projects. So this is going to put a lot of pressure on them, and they're going to be less productive. So project selection will help you in order to prioritize the projects and make sure that you just choose a couple of projects that are going to be profitable or providing some returns with minimum level of risks. And so you want just to go with those projects. So there are some challenges. So you need to make sure that the projects are closely tied to the goals and a strategy. So that's the first thing that is a bit challenging, because sometimes you just want to take opportunity, and the project sounds a good opportunity, but maybe it's not tied to your goals and a strategy. So that's one challenge. And how to handle the growing number of projects, and how to make sure that these projects are successful. So these are other challenges. So project selection is the process of evaluating individual projects or groups of projects. And then you choose to implement a set of projects so that objectives of that parent organization will be achieved. So this is a definition of the project selection, if you wish. So first of all, you do the project identification. In order to have new projects, you need to come up with new ideas. So these ideas can be from brainstorming within your organizations, or within your team members, or with some other people in your network, that you discuss some new thing that's happening and some opportunities. Or maybe you just want to visit other places. So you, for example, heard about the prefabrication in building industry, and it's doing very well in Sweden or in Japan, and you want to go there and visit there and see that what they're doing, so you can just see if there is any potential thing that you want to do, for example, in Australia. You also need to have a vision of future growth. So first of all, you need to know the market. And to see that if there is any opportunities and macroeconomy things that uh, that are happening, and that's it's going to affect you in order for your future growth. And this is something that you need to consider when you're selecting and identifying the projects. And also short and long-term objectives as an organization. You may have some short-term and also some long-term objectives that you need to see that how you can have a balance between both short-term and long-term objectives. You may also shortlist project opportunities that you based on the three things that we discussed that you may end up with like 5 or 10 projects. Then after that, you do the SWOT analysis that I'm going to discuss in a bit, and you determine the selection criteria. So based like job application. So you got those criteria, and based on that, you score the project that you shortlisted. And you do the preliminary project analysis with some financial tools that I'm going to discuss in the next lecture. And then you prioritize the project suitable for your organization and see that which project get the highest score or which couple of projects, depends how many projects that you want to do at the same time. And then you choose those projects and go ahead with them. So projects are different and organizations are different. So and based on that, the objectives for project selection are different. So can be for increasing the profit, can be to minimize threat of losses. So maybe there is something happened to you and your product is not selling anymore. So you just want to make sure that you run a project in order to minimize your losses. Or you want to just become more competitive. You're working in environments. So for example, you got a cafe and there's lots of cafes. And you just want to make sure that you are more competitive so you can earn more money compared to your the other cafes. Or maybe you just want to train people in a new area or you're non-for-profit organization goal. It's not about the profit anymore. So all of those financial tools, maybe it's not applicable anymore. And maybe just environmental goals or sustainability goals. So all those things are depends on the organization itself. And some organization may have the profit at this first thing. Some organization maybe look at the environmental and sustainability for the other thing. Okay. John asking if non-for-profit goal, it means that the project doesn't necessarily need to give revenue to the company. Yeah, that's exactly right. So if it's for not for profit, uh, you're not exactly to make any profit. So rate of return or those kind of things is not going to be applicable anymore. But at the same time, you need to make sure that you got enough funding from the resources that you think or from your bank account or someone else that's going to lend you the money for doing the project. So that's also you need to calculate how much money you would need for running the project, regardless of the profit that you're making. Okay, so let's get a 10 minutes break and then we will come back with the SWOT analysis and we'll discuss more about how to do the SWOT analysis. Okay, let's continue with the SWOT analysis. So SWOT analysis, as you can see from this slide, is the collection of strengths, weakness, opportunities, and trends. So for each project, you will realize that what would be those S, W, O, and T, and based on that, you will collect it together, and you decide that if this project is going to be uh, something that is going to be helpful or harmful. So if you strengths and opportunities are much more than the weakness and threats, it means that this project is perhaps is something that you want to consider. Or if you realize that the weakness and threats are much more than the strengths and opportunities, perhaps it's something that you may avoid doing it. So let's start with the strengths. So one thing that you need to consider is that experience and expertise in the project that you want to do. If you are highly experienced and you got a team of experts for doing this project, this is your strengths. So when you comparing the projects with each other, perhaps for this particular project, you got some strengths that you can put as experience and expertise. Maybe there's a financial position. So for example, you got a strong cash flow or you got a low level of debt. So as an organization, this strength, if you got a good financial position, can be applicable for all the projects or any project that you're taking. But maybe there are some projects that you're working with other companies or is an alliance or something like that. And then in that situation, you may decide, depends on who is going to be your partner in each project and how is going to be the cash flow and the debt. So what is the difference between experience and expertise? Experience means that you've done the similar work in that area. So your experience for doing that project. Expertise means that for the work that you are going to do, the team that you have has got highly skilled in those areas. So for example, if you're going to do a construction project, your team, you've got a whole team that's, for example, civil engineers, structural engineers, architect, and those kind of things that you can say that you got enough expertise within your team for doing that project. The other thing is about the capital raising capacity. So for the projects, maybe you don't have all the cash that you require for the investment and you want to borrow money. So depends if you're a public company, do the shareholders allow you to raise capital, or if you're getting from institutional banks or uh, and you're relying on getting loan for doing this project, is it possible and can you manage to get low interest rate in order to make sure that your capital raising capability is enough for doing that particular project? So some project, maybe the banks are willing to loan you money, but some other projects may not. Again, get back to the student accommodation, as we discussed, maybe this in this environment, maybe if you're saying that you're going to build a student accommodation, there's going to be a chance that they may know because there is not much demand for it. A strong network and collaboration, maybe in the area that you're going to do the project, you got a strong network and you're collaborating with the top companies in that field in order to do this project, so that increase your chance of success. And this is one of your strengths. Maybe you got loyal customers for that project. So loyal customers are very important. For example, for Apple, when they're producing the next generation of iPhone, iPad, or MacBook, etc., they know that whatever the product is going to look like and how it's compared to the other products, there are going to be some people that's going to buy those products no matter. So having a loyal customers in order to buy your product is another thing that is can be one of your strengths for doing that particular project. The other thing is that low cost of running business. So maybe this project, it doesn't have much overhead or it doesn't involve too many people to work. So, cost of doing that project is low, and that can be one of the strengths. But it's also, you also need to look at the return that you're getting. Maybe the cost of doing the project is less, but your return that's also getting is also minimum. So that's another thing that you need to think about. Okay. Any other example of a strengths? What do you think that can be an example of a strengths on top of the thing that we discussed here? Okay, nothing? Yep, government support. Maybe you got government support, you got some incentives that you want to do that. The relationship and network we discuss. Yep. So government incentives can be also like a good strength for that particular project. But it's a kind of between line. You can also put that in opportunities as well, because you want to take that opportunity in terms of the government incentive. So that can also categorize as opportunities as well. Less conflicts. That can be a strength in order to, like, how we look at it. That also can be included into strengths. Okay. Yeah, the good reputation of a company is one of the strengths. And that's the reason that you get loyal customers, because you got a good reputation, and this is one of the strengths. Okay, let's have a look at the weakness example. So maybe you're new to a particular market. So you're working in a different market. Now you see an opportunity in this new niche market. So for example, prefabricated structure, but you haven't done any prefabricated building before. So you're new into the market, and there are some other companies that are already doing that. So that can be like a weakness for you, because you may not be able to deliver the product as you want to. Maybe you're unable to raise money for investment. So the project that you're working, or you don't have enough experience in order to get a loan, or you don't have access to public money in order to raise money for investment. Maybe you have lack of experience in doing the similar projects, or you don't have enough expertise and trade personnel in order to do that. Or you cannot forecast market. Not everyone can forecast market trend, but maybe it's one of your weakness that you are not very sure about market trend. So that can be a weakness. The other thing, that the project has a high level of risks. So that's another thing that can be also considered as a threat, but can be also considered as a weakness as well. So low return on investment versus risk taken. And so you're taking a lot of risk, but the return is not that much. So you don't want to take it. So it's all about, risk and return. Do you know about the game Russian roulette? So this is, if you haven't heard of it, is kind of a dangerous game that you got a gun, and then and you can fill 6 bullets in that gun, let's say. And let's say you just take out 5 bullets and you got just 1 bullet in the gun. And the person coming to you and asking, you got 5 out of 6 chance, if you just fire the gun, you get away with it. And if you point the gun to yourself and fire the gun, you got 5 out of 6 chance that you can get away with it. And if you do that, I will pay you, let's say, 1,000. So you look at, there is a 1 in a 6 chance that you're going to, you know, uh, lose your life. So, and 1,000 perhaps is not that much, but maybe that person is saying that I'm going to pay you $10 million. Now the return is sounds very attractive, and if you're a risk-taking person, don't do it at home, but you may answer yes, because the return is much higher than risk. But if that person is saying that, instead of having one bullet out of six, maybe I put five bullets out of six, and I will pay you $10 million. Now there is only 1 out of 6 chance that you get away with this, with the $10 million. So you say that the risk is too much, although the return is very attractive. The risk is too much, and you don't want to go ahead with it. So it's always is a balance between the risk and return when you want to select the project. Okay, any other examples of weakness? Yeah, poor internal communication, less coordination. Yeah, so maybe the environment that you're working is not very productive, or the project that the people that in the project, or maybe like you got alliance and you know that these two companies are may not working well with each other in order to deliver this project. So that can be, for example, another weakness. Okay. Do you think that we can run SWOT analysis in midlife of project 2? It can run SWOT analysis anytime, but normally it's for comparing different projects in order to prioritize them. But if you, in the middle of the project, realize that the project may become a failure, you may do a SWOT analysis and see that what has been changed since the start of the project in terms of the strengths, opportunity, weakness, and threats. So market resources comparing to project requirements. Yeah, so you mean in terms of the weakness. So yeah, if you don't have enough resources in order to do the project, that is going to be a weakness as well. Yeah, thanks. Okay, so let's discuss about the opportunities. So for example, there is emerging technology that you want to invest on it. As we discussed, for example, is prefabricated housing, or new technology with more automation, or some other things that, or a new sustainable products that you want to, just invest on it. Can be new product with a new market, or can be a new process to doing the job better and more productive, or you want to become a market leader in that specific area. That's another thing. Or there's a special financing scheme. Maybe the interest rate are very low, and you just want to take the opportunity in order to get a good loan and invest on something. Maybe it's like operational cost saving. You're already doing something, but you realize that you're wasting a lot of money on that. So I just want to do some changes, maybe some automation or lean manufacturing, etc. You want to just reduce the cost. Or as we discussed, maybe there are some government and other incentives such as tax relief, maybe R&D tax relief, or carbon tax. That, for example, you want to reduce your carbon in order to get away with the carbon tax. The carbon tax is not incentive, but it's something that's counter incentive. So I just want to, pay less tax on that. Okay, so any other examples of opportunities? Cheaper labor. Yeah, maybe there is a good opportunity so you can employ cheaper labor. For example, recently, Australian government budget announced that some companies can get with some help from the government if they hire apprentices. So that's some incentive for some companies to hire, you know, young laborers. Dropping in the stock market, giving way to cheaper securities for projects. Let me cheaper securities. You mean like? Can you explain? So yeah, like stocks or bonds. So you just want to invest, for example, in a stocks or bond. That seems like investments, but on the other side, for example, you can get some low interest uh, loan from the bank, or the company can sell bonds with lower coupon rate or something like that. So you can get money from public or other institutional banking with a lower interest that they need to pay on those corporate bonds. Okay, threat examples. So maybe the product that you are going to develop, you got a big competitor like Google. So you want to, develop a new search engine. Do you dare to do that and compete with Google? Perhaps not. Or poor state of the economy, maybe there is a recession and you know that there's going to be lower chance of people having enough money to spend because of the higher unemployment, etc. Or maybe there is a trade war, so you just want to, for example, export your product to another country, but they put a lot of tariff taxes on your product, so your product is not going to be competitive in that country compared to the local products. So you're going to lose that market. Or maybe the exchange rates. So for example, you're producing your product in Australia and you're selling it in the United States, but the Australian dollar is getting stronger and stronger. It means that you still can sell your product in United States, but when you change the product back to Australian dollar, it's not going to be that much. So you're just losing some money, and your margin is getting lower and lower. So you're going to have like outdated technology. So the technology that you're working on is something that is already outdated. So you want to, develop something that is already, for example, like a phone that doesn't have a screen, let's say. So it's definitely outdated. Or maybe there are wars, terrorist attacks, pandemic like COVID-19. So those threats, you just want to see that everything settled down before you do the project. So any other examples of threats, you think? Yep, very good question. Thanks, Zara. So you do the risk analysis when you have a project and you want to plan for this project. So you do your due diligence in order to exactly look at all the possible risks, all the known unknowns, and everything. But this is just in general that you want to compare different projects. So maybe some of the threats is going to be in more detail. You prepare like a risk management plan for all the threats that you find out for that project later if you decided to continue with that project. But here you probably have a broader view in terms of the threats for each project, the potential threats for each project, and in terms of comparing different projects in order to prioritize your projects. So industry fluctuation. So maybe, yeah, there is not enough demand for the market. So that can be one thing. Policy or legal change, or for example, the one threat, if you're in United States, it depends on who is going to be the next president. Maybe if you're working in the oil fracking industry, if Biden comes, he said that he's going to, just transition away from that. So if your project is just going to have, invest on oil fracking, then perhaps this is going to be a big threat for you. Resource price increase. So yeah, that's another thing. You can see that there is, based on whatever reason, you predict that the resources that you want to use and the product that you want to use is in this project is going to have increased costs. If you can, based on your financial assessment, and put that increase in the cost and inflation and everything, and you also, again, you can see that the rate of return is attractive, then you can go away, do the project. Yep, and also the market change and the customer behavior and those kind of things is also important. Okay, for example, the customer behavior, let's say about the COVID-19. So in Australia, the situation is good, but for example, in the UK, you got the lockdown and everything, and you don't know for how long it's going to be locked down, but your project is going to have a restaurant or shopping center or something like that in this environment. So that is going to be a big threat for you, because people perhaps cannot go to the restaurant or to the gym or to, in the short term. So that's going to be another threat. Okay, so let's move on. So project selection models can be quantitative or qualitative. And so for quantitative, that we are going to discuss more in the next two lectures. So you got some tools in order to assess the rate of return and the other things about the project. And based on that, you can prioritize your project. But non-numeric or qualitative is just based on your major decision or senior management decision, etc. So models turn inputs to outputs, and they help the manager to decide on the values for the inputs and also evaluating outputs. So the inputs never fully describe the situation, because it may change. So you may put, like, for example, inflation as a 2%, but you realize that inflation gets higher or lower. And the outputs is also never fully describe the expected result, because it's just a model, it's a machine. I cannot trust it, but you can use it as a tool to make an informed decision as the manager. So qualitative or non-numeric project selection, different categories we can say. For one, for example, is a sacred cow, known as a sacred cow, which is often suggested by top management that has taken life of its own. So the management, no matter what, they want to go with this project. So maybe they've done some numeric project selection modeling, and based on that, they want to do it, or maybe not. But anyway, this is the part of the thing that they want to go with. Or maybe there is an operation necessity, so a project that is required in order to protect lives or property or to keep the company in operation. So that's And no matter what of the outcome of this project, this is something that you need to do. Or is it a competitive necessity, which means that the project that is required in order to maintain the company position in the marketplace? So if you don't do that, then you're going to lose uh, your company to the competitors and you're going to get out of the market. Or maybe it's like a product line extension. So the project is to extend the product line, which is evaluated on how well the new product going to uh, develop against the existing product in order to get some benefits. Or maybe it's a comparative benefit. So projects are subjectively rank order based on the perceived benefit to the company. So the last one, perhaps something that you don't want to do it, or is something that's in, long time ago people doing that based on, subjectively ranking the project. But nowadays you got all the tools in order to assess the financial viability of each project and also use other tools for project selection modeling. In terms of the numerical project selection models, so you got heaps of financial tools that you can use, which we are going to discuss in the next lecture, like net saving, saving to investment ratio, discounted cash flow, net present value, internal rate of return, and discounted payback period. So all these things we are going to discuss in the next lecture. So if you look at the cost versus time of a project, at the start of the project, maybe you have some R&D in order to see that what's the product is going to look like. You do some research and trial, etc., which you got some concept exploration and definition phase, which is lower cost. But when you go to the manufacturing and trial, the cost is increased. And then at the end of the research and development, so it's starting to put investment money to produce and develop that product. And then when it's successful, you go to the operation and support phase, and you need to hire people, pay for the raw materials, etc. And also at the end of the project, there is a disposal cost. So whatever you produce, the equipment or other materials, then you need to, at the end of the project, you need to take care of it in terms of the disposal, and you need to pay some money for disposing it. And so these are only the costs as the project timeline, but in the middle of that, especially in the operation and this operation phase, when you're selling the product, you can also earn some money. So you got some earning, and based on the earning that you get, it's going to offset your investment and the cost. And you hope that by the end of the project, your profit is going to be higher, your earning is going to be higher than your cost. So your net profit is going to be positive. Okay, so the first thing about is the cost of ownership. So the cost of ownership is the initial cost that you pay plus the cost of operation, the cost of maintenance, cost of downtime. For example, you're doing the project, but for some reason, maybe delaying getting some materials, or maybe there is a strike or something like that. You got some downtime, you do not do anything, but you need to pay the staff. Or maybe it's the cost of production, you need to get the raw materials, etc. And so these all aggregated. And then at the end of the project, you may have some remaining value. So you may sell some of the equipment, you may sell the land. So those kind of things is going to be remaining value, which is going to be deducted from all this cost. And all of that from the beginning of the project to the end of the project is going to be calculated and gives you a total cost of ownership over the time span of the project. Okay, so make sure that you are ready. We got a slide bonus point question after asking this question. So TCO applicable to only projects or new startup? TCO is applicable to any projects. Even if you are in the middle of the project, you still can calculate the TCO. So, and it depends, or for anything. So in the next example, you will see that in the like day-to-day life, how we can use TCO. Okay, so make sure that you're ready. So again, I'm saying that so the first three people that answer it is each going to get one bonus mark. Only the first three people. We cannot give it to all. You only need to answer it on a Slido, not in the chat box of BB Ultra. And yeah, make sure that you put your ZID next to your answer. So then I can, if your answer is correct, then I can give you the mark. Okay, before that, why is called cost of ownership? Ownership in particular, because it's cost of the ownership. You pay for that. For example, let's say this is like a operation, or it's less like a building. So you just pay for the land, you build something on it, and then you sell it. You got some remaining value. So this is the cost of the ownership that you have. What is the full name of ownership? It's total cost of ownership, TCO. Okay, so let's move on. Okay, so the question is that you got these two cars. Let's say that you want to buy each of these car and you want to calculate how much is going to be the total cost of owning of each of those car. And based on that, you want to select one of these cars. So calculate total cost of ownership for both vehicles over a year based on the thing that's mentioned in the table. So the current price, the fuel consumption, considering that the fuel price is 1.5 liter, the maintenance cost, and the insurance cost, and the depreciation rate. Depreciation is the price of asset decrease over time due to use, wear, and tear or obsolescence. And the other thing, just these cars are going to be used for 10,000 kilometer over a year. So 10,000 kilometer over a year, and calculate the total cost of ownership for these cars. So it's 1 year, 1,000 kilometer. Sorry, 1 year, 10,000 kilometer. Let me type it here. So you need to calculate the total cost of ownership for both cars, and based on that, decide which car you want to buy. So if you just want to, I'm not asking about your choice. So I'm asking you to do the to calculate the total cost of ownership of each of those cars, and based on that, make your decision. I've got 2 correct answers so far. Make sure that just don't put the numbers, associate each number with the car, and also lets me know which cars that you choose. And also I need the TCO for both cars. Okay, still waiting for the final correct answer. I wait for another 1-2 minutes. If there is no answer, then we only have 2 winners. Okay, so I've got 3 correct answer. Okay, so you can see that these are to make sure that you also believe that putting based on the responses that I receive. So these are the 3 first person that answer it correctly. Okay, so let me show you how to do that. So the total cost of ownership for this example is going to be initial cost plus cost of operation plus cost of maintenance minus the remaining value. The fuel price is going to be average $1.5 per liter and for use of 10,000 kilometers per year. And the Toyota fuel is going to be 6.4 liter per 100 kilometer. Is going to be multiplied by $1.5 multiplied by 10,000 kilometers, which is going to be $960. Total maintenance is going to be $500 per 10,000 kilometers, which is very cheap, but let's assume that. And so the maintenance is going to be $500. So you need to pay insurance for $1,200, and the remaining value is going to be $17,000 because you got the depreciation of $1,000. So the total remaining value is going to be 17,000. So the TCO is going to be initial cost 18,000 plus cost of operation is going to be the fuel and maintenance uh, and insurance plus the cost of operation and cost of maintenance. We put it here minus the remaining value, which is 17,000, and it's going to be $3,660 over a year. If you do the same for the Holden based on the table and the values that you received, it's going to be 3,815 for the Holden. So in terms of the total cost of ownership, Toyota is the choice, which you're going, if you just look at the total cost of ownership and not just nothing else, then perhaps you choose the Toyota option. Okay. I've just, the student ID, I just put it here. I'll just take a screenshot, as you can see. So Z5 to 69163. and Z50921154 and Z51711802. Okay, what is the logic of remaining value calculation? So the remaining value, let's say that you get this car, so now you pay for it for 18,000, but when you want to sell it, let's say 1 year from now, no one is gonna pay for it the same amount of money. Perhaps there is a depreciation, so you use that car, so then the cost is going to be lower. Inflation. If the inflation is very high, then that's another scenario. So this the remaining value is the value that you get from your car when you want to sell it. So in this example, there are some other things that you can calculate the present value of the money, which is going to be topic of the next lecture in terms of the discount rate, etc. So just hang on to that. I will explain more in details in the next lecture. Okay, so that's it for today's lecture. If you have any question, please let me know on a Slido or on the chat box. I will answer your question. Some tips for quiz 2. I think that make sure that you read the question carefully. Don't look at the time constantly and don't get nervous about time. So you got plenty of time. It's only 15 questions. You got 20 minutes. Some questions may take longer than the other questions. So don't panic if you see a question that's, for example, taking you a little bit of more time. But some question can be very easy to answer. We can answer like in 10 seconds. So it's combination of some questions or perhaps takes more time in order to read the question and evaluate the answer, etc. Are there some tricks in the question? What kind of tricks? There is no trick. The questions are fully explained. The answers are quite clear. So yeah. You will have calculation questions in quiz 2, yes, but it's not much. I cannot tell you that how many calculation questions gonna be, but as I said, some questions takes a little bit longer, but the calculations are pretty easy. I mean, anyway, like quiz 2, it's in my view is very simple, very easy. I expect that all of you get a very good mark. I think that's the time of the quiz is very relevant. It's very generous. I don't think that if you studied all the materials, then the 20 minutes is more than enough for you. You can just finish it in 10 or 15 minutes. But if you didn't study and you just want to look up all the questions in the lecture slides, then perhaps even 1 hour is not going to be enough for you. Can you post the result of the homework question of the previous lecture? Yes, I can. I will. You will have enough time to calculate. Okay. Okay, is there any other question? Project close means project success or fail. It can be both. You can close the project that is successful, or you can just close the project that is failed. So it's applicable in both scenarios. You're welcome. What's the meaning of the project closeout? So it's the same, closing the project, as you can see from the name. Okay, so the difference between the revenue and income, that revenue is the amount of the money that you get from, for example, selling the products or selling your services, etc. And the income is the amount of money after deducting all the costs. So for example, the cost can be cost of purchasing materials, cost of the paying staff, cost of paying energy bills, or taxes and everything. So the net income or profit is going to be after deduction of all those costs from your revenue or earning. You're welcome. Okay, so if there is no more questions, thank you for listening. Uh, okay, there we got one more question. So which one are exactly the project selection tool? SWOT is also one tool. Yes, definitely SWOT is one of the tools. And so SWOT is going to be overall looking at the projects is more qualitative, but there are other tools in terms of the financial viability and rate of return, etc., and some numeric models, which we are going to discuss in the next two lectures. Okay, I think yeah, quiz only covers up to today. So week 4 to week 8. Okay, that's all. Thank you, everyone. Thank you for listening. All the best. If you have any questions, feel free to put it on Moodle in the QA forum, and I'll get back to you on there so other people can also see your questions and answer. Okay, thank you very much. Have a good rest of the day. I'll see you next week.